That's a tough act to follow. Okay, well, I know that y'all all been dying to get back to the Great Tribulation. Sure, that's exactly what you were thinking. What better way to start the day than some of God's fiery judgment? So here we are. I'll pass out. We're going to be in chapter 8 of Revelation. I thought about doing a video because, normally we have a video. There's not really anything lighthearted about this topic this week. And, about the only thing I came up with was a discovery video on the effect of a meteor hitting the Earth, which, I don't know. I think you can probably figure it out. It's not good. Right? So with that introduction, grab one of those. Who has the extras?
We have one in here.
Okay, grab it. I'll pass them all out. Talking too much. Okay. Well, for those of you who've been following along, I'll try to do my 1-minute intro here. We started in chapter 1 with John's vision. Remember, of the Christ glorified. We also had the outline of the book, which is also very good to remember right here, where Jesus said, write the things you see, the things that are, and the things that take place after these things through the visions, right? Then we went through chapters 2 and 3. We went through the 7 churches, ending with Laodicea and Philadelphia. Laodicea, as you know, they had the church, they had Colossae on one side and Hierapolis on the other side. Colossae was known for the really cold water and the nice springs, and everybody would go there for healing. And Hierapolis had the hot springs that you could go there for healing, and it was a resort area. And Laodicea was right smack in the middle. And what they had? A lot of money and a lot of commerce, and they were right off the main trade route. But they didn't have any hot water, and they didn't have any cold water. So then they built aqueducts because we got money, we can fix this, right? So they brought the water in from the cold springs first, I think. And guess what temperature it was when it got there? Cold. It was lukewarm, right? And it was nasty, stagnant, right? Seen stagnant water? Yeah. So then, what do people say? Oh, no problem, we'll bring in the hot water. So then they spilled another $1 million. Sounds like maybe our government. And so they spend another $1 million or so. They bring in the hot water. Guess what temperature it is? Lukewarm. And nasty. Right? So then, when God's speaking to the church of Colossae, and he says, you are lukewarm, oh that you were not hot or cold, and I spit you out of your mouth, or vomit, might be a more literal translation. So that's what he thinks of lukewarm Christians, and he was meaning it directly to them. And that stands in contrast with the church of Philadelphia, which has the promise of what? That you will be spared from the very hour of testing that will come upon the whole world. Now, there's only been one other testing that came upon the whole world, right? That was back in Genesis. All my kid care folks are shaking their head, right? They teach it all the time, right? And all you do is a little bit of water, right? A little water and a boat, Okay? And then, everybody climbed on the boat, and then they got the door up, and then God did one last thing before it happened. What did he do? He sealed it, right? He sealed Noah and the family in the boat. Why did they have to be sealed? Because they were going through the storm, right? Okay. You remember a guy named Enoch? Way early in the Bible. Enoch's one of those guys, you have to read the very beginning, but it says he walked with God, and then he was not, right? So what happened to Enoch? two ways to escape the flood. You either went the way Enoch did, and you went up, or you went through it, right? So when we see the second judgment on the earth, does God change? No. There's still two ways. You either go up, or if you're going to go through it, you better be sealed, right? And that's what we saw. So when we got into chapter 4 was the rapture, right? There's a sound like a trump. We'll keep reinforcing this because I don't want y'all, there's a popular thing here in the world is to take the hope out of the book of Revelation. It was written as hope to a persecuted church. We have no, church isn't persecuted now. It's not like we're having Christians be killed for the faith, persecuted all over the world or anything like that. So I'm sure this book doesn't apply. But just in case, I want y'all to know that this is a book of hope, right? Okay? So there's a shout sound, then the 24 elders are seated, which means the 12 and the 12 disciples, apostles, right? Which represents both the Old Testament saints and the New Testament saints, right? And in chapter 5, we saw the throne room of God. We saw the scroll, remember? And who's worthy to take the scroll? And the scroll represented what?
Title to the land.
The title to the earth, right? Yeah, land. And it had 7 seals on it. We talked about the importance of the seal. The seal had to be given by the king. It had a signet ring, right? The more seals, the more important the document. There was only one person worthy, right? So Jesus, right, the book is about him, opens and starts popping the seals. And we went through the seals, right? That was chapter 6. We had the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, right? The rider on the white horse, who was given a crown and a bow and no arrows. And we read that compared to chapter 19, which was a picture of Jesus on a white horse. They're not the same, right? One, because Satan masquerades as an angel of light. So he comes with false peace. And he comes on a white horse and a crown given. Right? So when we see the Antichrist come, he's not going to be some evil, mean guy. He's going to be so good. So smooth. Right? And he's going to come with a bow, no arrow, because he didn't even need to fire a shot. He's going to take it over. Just with the breath. Right? Then what happens? It's a false peace. So the red horse comes, which is war. What follows war? Death. The black horse. What follows war and death? Disease and pestilence, the green horse. Right? And then we get into chapter 7. We're still going through the seals. We had the great earthquake happen, you remember? And the people were crawling under the rocks, and they were trying to run from the wrath of the Lamb. Remember we talked about that? You see beware of dog signs, but you never see beware of the Lamb sign. You know, right? Everybody seems to think of Jesus as the little lamb. But what? We're looking at half of Jesus, right? As a church, we're guilty of letting the world define Jesus as this half, not as the King of Kings, Lord of Lords, the one that's coming in judgment, the one that the Jews originally thought that was going to come with an iron rod, rule, and take over and make everything right, and fulfill their promise to live forever in the land. That's what they were looking for in the first coming. And he did it because of his amazing grace, right? He came to pay the way first. Right? But now we're seeing him come in the second coming as we get closer and closer. So now in chapter 7, we had a spiritual timeout, right? We had, what, 1/4 of the population die through all the other judgments, through the first seals. And then there is a spiritual timeout, right? God tells the 4 angels holding back the winds that are about to hit the earth. He says, whoa, time out. And what does he do? He seals. And who does he seal? The 12 tribes. Why does he seal them? We talked about this. What is meant? Who's going to go through tribulation? The 12 tribes. His people are going through. If you, the church, were going through tribulation, would he not seal you? Of course. Okay? So yet again, you're not here. I keep reinforcing this because everyone's going to tell you out there in the world, they don't study it, they don't understand it. It's the most organized book in the entire Bible. It's logical. It flows. But don't get it out of order. Right? We talked about that. I even played a little clip where the guy was going through, what was it? I think it's in the trumpet judgments here. And he was saying the 7th trumpet is ISIS, and this seal was World War II. And you, whoa, time out, right? The turtles in my backyard in the pond have not cried out to Jesus yet. Okay? So I know that hasn't happened because all of creation hasn't praised him. And if it did, I'm sure people would notice. Right? CNN would probably come up with a wacky story about it and how the aliens did it, but nonetheless, they would have noticed, right? You couldn't have missed it. Okay. So now, as we get into chapter 8, we're going to get to the 7th trumpet. Now, what I want you to see is that this book is about Jesus. Jesus is controlling everything, right? Jesus is the one with the authority. He grabbed the title. He's taking deed. He's taking control. And you see him slowly, methodically walking towards the earth to take over, right? Why is he walking slowly? Why is it metered out? Why? God's grace, right? God could wipe it out like that, right? But he chose not to. He's metering it. Right? Giving them an opportunity. So that's what we see here. We see right here the last big thing that we have that happened as we opened chapter 8 was the great earthquake. Remember? And everybody was hiding in the rocks and trying to hide from the wrath of the Lamb, and they were crying on the rocks to fall on them and kill them, so they didn't have to face the wrath of the Lamb. And meanwhile, God's trying to call out. They even know why it's happening. Yet they won't repent, right? But God calls a spiritual time. He seals his people right before we go into here. Now, let's go into 1 and 2. Who wants to read? Chapter 8.
When he opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. Then I saw the 7 angels who stand in the presence of God. 7 trumpets were given to them.
Okay. A couple of things that you'll see here. When the 7th of any series is opened, it opens the next 7. They're all interconnected. Okay? So when you get to the 7, you get to 6, and then the 7th one will open 7 more of whatever we're doing. So as we go through the seals, the 7th seal opens the 7 trumpets, right? And when we get to the 7th trumpet, it's going to open the 7 bowls, right? So it all goes in progression. If you haven't lost the symbolism here too, you know, we have the seals, which is the title deed, right? And then we have the trumpets, which, and we're going to get into this a little bit, but that was God's uses that in the Bible. In the desert, when the tabernacle was there, it took 7 blows of the trumpet for God's people to be on the move, right? And then the bowls were used in the Holy of Holies for a sin offering, for atonement, right? So what you see is you see a progression as we go, right? God's people are on the move, then the offering is given. But in this case, in Revelation, this is judgment, right? So the people are coming to the holy altar of God with an empty bowl because they have trodden on the blood of Christ. They have It was paid, right? God gave for the whole world, yet they did not accept it. So if you did not accept it, you come with an empty bowl to the throne of God. And God, in his righteous judgment and wrath, promises to fill that bowl overflowing with wrath. And that's where we get the bowl of judgment. Okay? So that's where we're heading. Okay? So I want you to keep it in context. So right here we have this strange silence. Now there's three possible explanations for this. Okay? I'll put it here in your outline. First is that God's even given them more time to repent. Remember the last thing that we happened on earth was the people were crying for help from the wrath of the Lamb, right? So he's given them more time to say, okay, maybe they're just rash. Maybe they'll come to their senses and they'll turn to me. Right? That's the first explanation. The second explanation is that the judgments of the trumpets are so severe, which most people believe that we're at about the halfway point of the 7 years of judgment right here. So there's definitely a change. The severity level of the judgments change here. And they're so severe that all of heaven kind of has a spiritual moment of silence before these judgments are dealt out. Because there are going to be judgments not only on the earth itself, but directly on man. And they're going to be God. They're going to be directed directly from the throne. Very strong. The others were more like consequences of, the four horsemen and towards that end. Okay. The last one, which I really like and I tend to think is Cody's version of this, is that the throne room is silent for 30 minutes. And when you read ahead one verse, there's an event that happens. The prayer of the saints come into the throne room of God. And all of heaven stops for 30 minutes. So, I want you to think about that. If you knew that when the prayers of the saints, which is our church, don't get caught up with the term saints. We are saints. Okay? If you believe in Christ and you have the Spirit in you, you are a saint. Okay? So when your prayers hit the throne room of God, they're so precious to an almighty God that all of heaven stops down for 30 minutes. Can you picture that? Would that change your prayer life? To know that God takes your prayers that seriously? Is it convicting to you and to me when I think of my prayers that I don't take them that seriously? And yet God has stopped down all of heaven? Okay. So next time when you're in one of those funks, or when you're talking to somebody about the power of prayer, you need to pull out this verse. You need to say, look, in Scripture, it says all of heaven remains silent for 30 minutes as the angels carried in the prayer. Now, who are these angels? I did a little bit of research on them. They were likely seraphim. Seraphim were the angels that were around the throne room. There's only a few different angels that were mentioned either by type or by name. By name, there's only 3 angels that are mentioned, which are Satan, Michael, and Gabriel. Those are the only 3 angels that are mentioned. Gabriel is named the angel of the Lord. So most people believe that this is Gabriel here, He's also the angel that showed up with Mary and Christ's birth. Remember the announcement and all that? So he came directly from the throne room. So most people believe this is probably Gabriel. And the seraphim are the ones that are flying around the throne room going, holy, holy. Okay? So normally so there's only certain angels that are that close to the throne room. So that's what we think these 7 angels are. Okay. And the 7 trumpets. Now, I want to prepare you because my job here is to make you ambassadors to this book that the world has turned on its ear. Okay? So I'm trying to equip you for some of the pushback that you will get when you take a hopeful position that this is about the church being raptured out before and that this is a orderly book. Some people are going to throw challenges your way, and you have to be prepared. One of them is right here, that in 1 Corinthians 15, 51 through 52, it says that we go up when the last trump is sound. And a lot of people will take that and say, oh, the last trump. That means the 7th trumpet. So we don't go up until the 7th trumpet, right? Okay, no, that's not right. Okay? Now let's talk about it. Because the trumpet you can't lump into 2 different things. The trumpet is described one way to the New Testament believers, and it's described another way to the Old Testament. All things have a context, right? Anybody have kids here? Is context important? Right? I'll give you an example. I happen to have a daughter. You might know her, Izzy. We tell her the gas stove is off limits to cook unless mom or dad are there. It's a danger thing. It's a no. Not a maybe, not a kinda, not a only under special occasions. It's a no. It's a hard stop no, right? So I come home. She's cooking on the gas stove. I go, whoa, how did this happen? And she goes, Dad said it's okay. I go, whoa, hang on. Dad, my dad, or grandfather. I said, I doubt Doodad said it was okay. What did Doodad specifically say? What was the context of what he said? Well, I asked if I could cook dinner. He said yes. So that means I can use the gas stove when you're not home. Right? No! That's a totally wrong translation, right? It was all the context, right? Okay? So the context is important. Doodad did not let you use the gas stove, right? But that's what she implied. Okay? I'm sure you all have any of these issues.
We never did that either.
Totally. I'm glad I can have this therapy session. All the therapy here. Okay. So, we're going to do a quick word study. Okay? I've got a handy dandy chart that I worked with one pot of coffee last night. And there are 20 references in the New Testament to trumpets. And there are 92 in the Old Testament. Now, I just pulled out some, okay, not all. And most of the ones in the New Testament on that 20 are all, most of those, like 14 of those or whatever, do the math there, are in Revelation when we get to the trumpets, right? Because it's going to say blow the trumpet again and again and again. So there's a lot of the trumpet references are in the book of Revelation, okay? Which, one of the rules when you're looking at the book of Revelation and you want to use scripture very carefully, right? As a teacher, I'm held under a higher standard. The word says, lest you become a teacher, because you'll be under greater judgment. Okay? So I have to be very careful when I teach, right? For that very reason. You should too. Remember, the word is a double-edged sword, right? That means it cuts. Okay? So you have to be very careful when you're using it, right? You have to make sure you're using it properly, like a gas stove, right? You have to make sure that you have it in proper context, okay? So we're going to look at the context of these, because when you look at the meaning of anything in Revelation, if you cannot find it in one of the other 65 books, then that does not mean that God said, okay, just creatively think of anything, right? And fill in the blank, right? Because you're obviously smarter than I am, right? Is that what God said? No. He gave us 65 books, okay? If it isn't in the other 65 books, then you don't have the freedom of saying definitively, this is what this means. You can only say, this is what it literally says. Okay? Okay. Now we're clear on that. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox. Okay. Let's go to the New Testament first, because it's the quickest. First off, there are no references in the New Testament to all, with the exception of the book of Revelation, there are no references to 7 trumpets. Period. Okay? 7 is not there. It's all Old Testament. The reference to trump or trumpet in relation to the church is a single trumpet. Always. Right? Even in 6:2, where God says, don't sound a trumpet before you give your offering, right? Jesus is saying, don't be like the Pharisees and make a big production out of your giving, right? And then in Matthew 24, with a loud trumpet call, the elect will be gathered, right? Okay? 1 Corinthians 15:52, the last trump, the dead will rise and we will be changed. Well, who is the last trump? Or what is the last trump is the question, right? So let's go on. 1 Thessalonians 4:16. The Lord himself, with the command of the trump of God, we will be caught up in the clouds. I paraphrase. Okay. But who is the last trump? The last trump is Christ. Okay? We're not talking 7 trumpets. We're talking Christ. He's the last trump. And the authority is the trump of God. He's speaking with the trump of God. Okay? Hebrews, you've rejected the grace, Christ, the trump of God. Right? Okay, I'm paraphrasing, but that's what it's saying. Okay? New Testament, Revelation 1:10. This is John's vision, right? Christ. A voice like a trumpet, right? So what do we know based on New Testament? There's no references to 7 trumpets. And the trump is also the voice of Christ, right? The voice of God, right? With the authority. Okay? Old Testament. There was a long blast and people would come to the mountain. This is where Moses, right? Moses is speaking with God on the mountain. They can't go near the mountain. They can't touch the mountain. They can't think about the mountain until they hear the blast, right? And the blast was loud. Why? It was the blast of God. It's the trump of God, right? Okay? Then there were 2 silver trumpets. They were used in Numbers 10. The 2 silver trumpets, we talked about that, right? It took 7 blows of the trumpet to get the tribes to move out, right? 3 were for the ark and the tabernacle and the furniture and all the stuff. And then the other 4 were the 4 directions around the ark and encampment, right? Of God's people, the 12 tribes. The other thing that consistently the trump was used was for help, sound an alarm and remember your God, and he will save you for your enemies. Right? So here we see the trumpet call. The trumpet calls God's people. Right? God's people, the seal, they're sounding the trumpet. They're at war. They're at war right now with the enemy. Right? They're the ones carrying the battle because we're up in heaven on it. Right? Okay? And who's going to show up when they blow the trumpet? Right? God's showing up. Okay? Gideon used the trumpet. Right? The 7 trumpets, of course, were in Jericho. Back to my Creek kids. Right? 7 blows of the trumpet, and what fell? Falls, right? Well, the 7 blows of the trumpet here at the end of the world, and what's going to fall? Right? A lot's going to fall, right? All the opposition to Christ is going to fall eventually. Okay. And then you get into even some of the prophetic. Psalm 4. God has gone up with a shout, and the Lord with the sound of a trumpet. Right? Here we go. Again, the Lord is referenced as a trumpet. The sound of a trumpet. Okay? The Lord will appear over them, and God will sound the trumpet. Zechariah. Right? Okay? It all ties together. This is not fiction. Right? You don't have to go guess. You just look it up. There's 65 books with all the proper context for this. So don't let somebody mislead you, misguide you. The other thing is, there's 92 references in the Old Testament. Probably 40 or 50 of those is the king entering, right? They blow the trumpets as the king enters. Well, what's happening? The king's entering, right? Christ is starting to enter into the earth, right? So they're already blowing the trumpets because the process is starting, right? Okay? So we keep it all in context. I took a diagram there of the way the ark was and the 12 tribes, so you can see there. And then let's go on to 8. Any other questions on that? Did I beat that dead horse? Okay, I'm done. Okay. 3 through 6, who wants to read?
Then another angel, having a golden censer, came and stood at the altar. He was given much incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of all the saints upon the golden altar which was before the throne. And the smoke of the incense, with the prayers of the saints, ascended before God from the angel's hand. Then the angel took the censer, filled it with fire from the altar, and threw it to the earth. And there were noises, thunderings, lightnings, and an earthquake. So the 7 angels who had the 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound.
Okay. Well, once again, Christ is controlling this. So he's no longer at the lampstands. One of the translations I read actually said that this was Christ because he was taking the prayers of the saints. But I disagree with that. That's Cody's theology. You can take what you want. But my Christ won't be described as an angel. Okay? So I think that's a little off, in my opinion. So I tend to take the words literally, and if Christ was really there, it wouldn't say an angel. It's very specific. And later we'll see, it'll say mighty angel, say strong angel. You know, there's rank in the angels, right? So the idea here of an angel doesn't indicate that this angel is anything special, right? I mean, an angel is a messenger, right? They're all qualified and created by God. So, now, when we get here, what's the context of the censer? Okay? Y'all have to remember the temple. Once again, we're dealing with the Jews, which are God's people, right? His chosen people. You remember the whole process of atonement, right? The holy priest would have to go through the purification rites. They put the rope around his ankle in case he didn't make it, right? And he'd go into the Holy of Holies, and when he went in, he'd have a censer, and that would be burning incense, right? And the incense represented the prayers and all that. And that would be his cover, like his smoke screen, so that he could enter without being struck down with the presence of God, right? So So you get the picture of man entering the Holy and Holies with the offering, right, out here of the censer. Now we get the reverse, right? Now the very censer that had come with what? The prayer of the tribulation saints, right? And what was their prayer? Y'all remember that? Going back in time, and all this is sequencing. They said, how long, O God? How long? When are you going to kill these folks? The evil, all the blood that is shed. Remember? He gave them all white robes, and he said, hang on. The reason is because your number is not fulfilled yet. There's not enough martyrs yet. Well, now those prayers are coming up, right? And how does God answer? He shuts down heaven for 30 minutes when those prayers hit, right? And then those prayers hit, and the response is immediate and strong, right? The very instrument that was used to carry those prayers, the censer, is filled with fire and immediately hurled back at earth, right? Time is up, right? The prayer, what is my earned name? James 5:16. So, there you go. Right. Okay. Now, how would you apply that today? What does the incense mean? How should you approach the throne room of God? How should your prayers be heard? Has God given you an instrument that was meant to be used for worship, like the censer, right? It was given as an instrument to be used in incense, to be used for His service. And yet, it was thrown back at Him. So has God given you something? Has He given you a gift, a talent? What has He given you that you maybe aren't using it for His glory? And what do you think He thinks about that? I'll be quiet. Next, we have thunder, rumblings, and lightning. What do you think that represents? Means judgment's coming, right? One of the translations I said, and my science teacher will appreciate this, is it mentioned thunder before lightning. And one of the theories out there is that violates the law of nature. Thunder can't happen before the lightning, right? So maybe God's going to do this so everybody on the earth knows it's coming from Him directly. This is not nature. This is God, right? Interesting. Okay, 8:7. Who wants to read?
The first angel sounded his trumpet, and there came hail and fire mixed with blood, and it was hurled down upon the earth. A third of the earth was burned up, a third of the trees were burned up, and all the green grass was burned up.
Okay. What you're going to see here is the judgments are now going to affect creation, the earth itself. Because remember, God's got to purify everything, right? He's making a new heaven and a new earth, right? And before that, we're going to have a millennium. So everything has been corrupted, including the creation. So what you'll see is these judgments, especially here, will track. They tie directly to the creation, the same flow. So right here, this one is to the grass and the trees, right? Well, that was Genesis 1:11, right, in the creation. He established her, and then he actually, go back and look at it, he made the trees and the plants before he even set the sun to govern the day and the moon and the stars to govern the night, right? doing it in the same order. So the judgment is on that first. Okay? Why a third? Why is he using fire for judgment?
Fire cleanses, right?
Yeah.
Clean up the world.
What?
Clean up the world.
Yeah.
Can't use water.
Can't use water. Exactly.
You promise.
And it's only a third. Why?
The other 2/3 are filled with water.
Or maybe he's giving room for people to repent, right? Yeah. The other thing that you'll see is there's a lot of parallels on these judgments with the plagues in Egypt. So it begs the question, if you believe that the Egyptian plagues that happened, remember the 10 plagues, God gave the plagues, what was he trying to do? He's trying to get them to turn, right? And they kept getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And Pharaoh's heart was hard, remember? If you believe that those plagues were literal, most of us do, some may not, but most of us do, then how can you be intellectually correct if you don't believe that these plagues are literal? Right? If they were literal plagues on Egypt, then these will be literal judgments on the earth. You can't have it both ways. Right? Okay? Let's go. 8 and 9. Who wants to read?
The second angel sounded his trumpet, and something like a huge mountain, all ablaze, was thrown into the sea. A third of the sea turned into blood, a third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed.
Remember we saw this on the video. One of the interpretations that's got like 3 million hits on YouTube says that this is the World War II. This is the atomic bomb that we dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. It's the Great Mountain that fell. Come on. A, it's totally out of order, right? B, this says literally the sea, does it not? Now I know the sea can mean people in certain translations, but this is saying the sea turned to blood. This is specific to the sea. It's not keeping directly spiritually accurate. Plus, once again, what's our rule when we have an image? What do? Where do we look first to translate the image or the symbol?
In the same book, from the same author.
We look in the Bible, right? There's 65 books. Is there a reference to a burning mountain in the Bible? Yes. Can someone please read that? I put it in your outline there. Jeremiah 51:25.
Behold, I am against you, O destroying mountain, who destroys all the earth, says the Lord. And I will stretch out my hand against you, pull you down from the rocks, and make you a burden.
See, there is a reference, right? So, what do we think? A burning mountain? I don't know. We can't know this. But what we do know is that it's going to be severe. We know the impact of it. It could be a meteor. A lot of people think it could be a meteor because it looks like a mountain. It'll be on fire like a mountain. And it will hit the sea. And it would have some of these impacts, right? But we can't know. Because it's not explained. There are certain things in this book that are not explained. But once again, if you try to explain this as the atom bomb in World War II, you violated so many rules of Scripture. But yet we have millions of people in the world that are believing it. Okay? Okay, 8 and 10. Who wants to read? 8 or 10 through 11. Sorry, chapter 8. More copy.
The third angel sounded his trumpet, and a great star, blazing like a torch, fell from the sky on a third of the rivers and on the springs of water. The
The name of the star is worm. A third of the waters turned bitter, and many people died from the waters that had become bitter.
Okay. This is really pretty interesting. Wormwood. Okay. What is it? Well, it's referenced in the Bible. Guess what? So what do? When we don't know? We go back to the Bible, to the other books. I put the references there for you. I did the homework for you. Deuteronomy 29:18. It's mentioned in the context of idolatry. Jeremiah 9:15. It's mentioned in the context of calamity. Lamentations 3:15. It's mentioned in the context of sorrow, right? Lamentation, of course. That really threw you. Amos 5:17. It's in false judgment. So what does all this mean? Wormwood suggests that this is a judgment on man for its idolatry and false judgment, and it will cause certain calamity and sorrows, right? Put it all together, right? Wormwood was defined by John MacArthur as a bitter, poisonous substance derived by a root that causes drunkenness and eventually death. Okay? What is the reference to bitter waters? Remember the story by Moses? All the people were complaining, no water in the desert, no water. And they finally get to the water, right? And the water is bitter. And they all go to Moses, you took us here to die, right? There's no hope. And then what does Moses do? He prays, and God says, throw the tree in the water, and the water will turn sweet. What is the tree? The cross. The cross. Jesus turns the bitter water sweet. Jesus is a river of living water, right? What did he say to the woman at the well? Right? Come to me, you'll thirst no more, right? Have streams of living water. Up until this point, it's been kind of at creation, right? There's a turn in this judgment. What waters are struck here? Rivers and streams. What is the importance of that?
The waters.
That's the fresh water. What are you drinking?
Filtered water.
No. What I'm trying to say is all the fresh water on the earth is affected by this judgment, right? So the fresh water is, before it was salt water, now it's the fresh water. Now you're affecting the very drinking water of the people, right? This is getting serious at this point, right? And this is the transition. So we went from the first three judgments, right? There's this judgment. What trump are we on? Sorry. Three. Yeah, the first three here are on the earth. The third one is directly affecting man. Okay? But the next trumps are going to be right at man. And it's going to get wild and weird. Okay? So we'll have to hang on tight for those. Okay? Let's go 12 and 13. I'm going to have to hurry.
Then the fourth angel sounded, and a third of the sun was struck, a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that a third of them were darkened. A third of the day did not shine, and likewise the night. And I looked, and I heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, because of the remaining blast of the trumpet of the three angels who are about to sound.
Okay. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay. The woe trumpets are coming next. Okay. They're going to be wild. But first, let's take this. A third of the day, a third of the night, a third of the moon, a third of the stars. We have a science teacher in our class. If a third of the sun is hit, what will be the likely impact? Do you think the temperature might change a little bit here? Mm-hmm. You think our scientific community that believes in global warming is going to have a little bit of a problem, right? When a third of the sun is gone, then we're going to have a global cooling, right? That could be a little bit of an issue, okay? Next, and this also tracks with the creation. I put the reference in there in Genesis. He's going right in order. Next, if you read verse 13 in NIV and you read it in New King James, you're going to see two different things. What flies in the sky is either an angel or an eagle. Okay. Which I think is kind of curious. What most people believe, now that we've had a little more discoveries from like the Dead Sea Scrolls and more of the scriptures, is that we think that is actually an eagle, not an angel. Most of the scriptures predominantly say that that is an eagle. So at this point, things are so bad that God is using the very birds of the sky to fly and cry out for people to repent and come to Christ. And you're seeing an eagle fly out, calling, praising people, praising Jesus and telling people to repent. You gotta be pretty dead set not to repent if an eagle's flying over me and telling me to repent, right?
Cody, is there a significance to all the thirds?
I think it's just metered. I don't know. I mean, 3 is obviously a biblical, number, but I think it, I didn't read anything specifically in my research on that, other than it's metered out. I mean, in the last one, it was a fourth of the earth, so now it's a third. It's increasing in strength, but he's still metering it out, making sure that some people still have time to repent. And he's giving everybody the opportunity. Even the eagles are crying out. You've got the 144,000 that are sealed. They're trying to get people to repent. And they're sealed, so all this that's happening isn't affecting them, right? So, as we go on, the woe trumpets are going to make this a lot worse. But right now, with the knowledge you have of Revelation, what is the consequence of you letting the world find this book versus you find this book? What is the consequence? Do you want your friends that may not believe in Jesus, do you want them going through? What are the stakes? What are we going to do? That's the thing you got to ask yourself. And that's why I'm studying this book. Okay.